All right, y'all. So today we're going to be delving into some income inequality issues in America, and specifically in New Orleans. So why there are rich people, why there are poor people, and if anything should be done about it. So I'm going to show you all a video first, and can I get a volunteer to read the first question under my video? Raphael, can you read that?
How does the issue from the video play out in New Orleans?
Good. How do you think this issue that you're going to learn about in the video play out in New Orleans? And Derek, can you read my second question?
What does income inequality look like to you?
Good. What does income inequality look like to you?
There's a chart I saw recently that I can't get out of my head. A Harvard business professor and economist asked more than 5,000 Americans how they thought wealth was distributed in the United States. This is what they said they thought it was. Dividing the country into 5 rough groups of the top, bottom, and middle 3 20% groups, they asked people how they thought the wealth in this country was divided. Then he asked them what they thought was the ideal distribution, and 92%, that's at least 9 out of 10 of them, said it should be more like this. In other words, more equitable than they think it is. Now that fact is telling, admittedly, the notion that most Americans know that the system is already skewed unfairly. But what's most interesting to me is the reality compared to our perception. The ideal is as far removed from our perception of reality as the actual distribution is from what we think exists in this country. So ignore the ideal for a moment. Here's what we think it is again. And here is the actual distribution. Shockingly skewed. Not only do the bottom 20% and the next 20%, the bottom 40% of Americans barely have any of the wealth. I mean, it's hard to even see them on the chart. But the top 1% has more of the country's wealth than 9 out of 10 Americans believe the entire top 20% should have. Mind-blowing. But let's look at it another way, because I find this chart kind of difficult to wrap my head around. Instead, let's reduce the 311 million Americans to just a representative 100 people. Make it simple. Here they are: teachers, coaches, firefighters, construction workers, engineers, doctors, lawyers, some investment bankers, a CEO, maybe a celebrity or two. Now let's line them up according to their wealth. Poorest people on the left, wealthiest on the right, just a steady row of folks based on their net worth. We'll color code them like we did before based on which 20% quintile they fall into. Now let's reduce the total wealth of the United States, which was roughly $54 trillion in 2009, to this symbolic pile of cash. And let's distribute it among our 100 Americans. Well, here's socialism, all the wealth of the country distributed equally. We all know that won't work. We need to encourage people to work and work hard to achieve that good old American dream and keep our country moving forward. So, here's that ideal we asked everyone about. Something like this curve. This isn't too bad. We've got some incentive, as the wealthiest folks are now about 10 to 20 times better off than the poorest Americans. But hey, even the poor folks aren't actually poor, since the poverty line has stayed almost entirely off the chart. We have a super healthy middle class with a smooth transition into wealth. And yes, Republicans and Democrats alike chose this curve. 9 out of 10 people, 92%, said this was a nice, ideal distribution of America's wealth. But let's move on. This is what people think America's wealth distribution actually looks like. Not as equitable, clearly, but for me, even this still looks pretty great. Yes, the poorest 20 to 30% are starting to suffer quite a lot compared to the ideal, and the middle class is certainly struggling more than they were, while the rich and wealthy are making roughly 100 times that of the poorest Americans and about 10 times that of the still healthy middle class. Sadly, this isn't even close to the reality. Here is the actual distribution of wealth in America. The poorest Americans don't even register. They're down to pocket change. and the middle class is barely distinguishable from the poor. In fact, even the rich between the top 10 and 20 percentile are worse off. Only the top 10% are better off. And how much better off? So much better off that the top 2 to 5% are actually off the chart at this scale. And the top 1%, this guy, well, his stack of money stretches 10 times higher than we can show. Here's his stack of cash, restacked, all by itself. This is the top 1% we've been hearing so much about. So much green in his pockets that I have to give him a whole new column of his own because he won't fit on my chart. 1% of America has 40% of all the nation's wealth. The bottom 80%, 8 out of every 10 people, or 80 out of these 100, only has 7% between them. And this has only gotten worse in the last 20 to 30 years. While the richest 1% take home almost a quarter of the national income today, in 1976, they took home only 9%, meaning their share of income has nearly tripled in the last 30 years.
All right, y'all, so I'm going to cut that video a little short because I think you guys got the issue, right? The majority of Americans, if you think about all of the wealth or all of the money that America makes, the majority of Americans, especially for poor people, make such a little amount of money compared to the top 1 or 2% of people. So I want to just have a quick discussion on this. Do you agree with the message of this video, that this is even a bad thing? Why or why not? Remember, the reason why we work hard is to try and get better jobs. But if you think it is an issue, what are we going to do about it? So 1, is this an issue? Why or why not? And 2, if you think it is an issue, then what should we do about it? You have the next 1 minute at English level 0 to write down your thoughts. This is really good writing. Excellent, y'all. So let's take a look at some opinions. Raise your hand if you think this is an issue. Good, I got 100% of us. All right, so why is this an issue then? We're going to start out with, so now, why is this an issue?
I think this is an issue because poor and middle class doesn't get any of the money by the rich, and 1% gets all the money.
Exactly, so that's clearly an issue. Now I'm going to push you guys to think. Do you think that it's fair that if you have a better job, you should work more money? So let's say if you spend a lot of time going into becoming a doctor, right? You go into medical school and you spend all this time and all this money, now you're a doctor and your job's very important. Not everybody can be doctors. Raise your hand if you think a doctor should make more money. Nope. Okay, then compared to, let's say, someone who is like a teacher, right? Who hasn't put in that time to become a doctor. Okay. I know, right? But it's not nearly the amount of skills required to be a doctor. What I'm sort of getting at is we have to think here, the bridge between harder jobs, earning more money, or more in-demand jobs. Like, not everybody can be a pro football player. That's why they make so much money, because they're so skilled. Or not everyone can design computer software, which is why those people make more money. So we sort of have to bridge this. Now, if this is a problem, which you all said you guys think, then what should you do about it? What do you think we can do about it? Raphael?
I think we could take it to like the presidential attention and vote like who's going to manage the money best for everybody, not just for the higher class. Because it's true that they work harder and needed more work to get that, but everybody needs enough money to survive.
Exactly, everybody needs enough money to survive. Who can add on to that? Because that was a really powerful point. Jordan?
I want to add on to Raphael's thing because some people have more financial powers than others.
Good. So what should you do about it then? What should we do about it? Because you're absolutely right.
Bring it to the legislature.
Okay, so the president or maybe even the government. And Ryan, what do you think?
I think that we should like start a bunch of petitions, so then it'll reach attention and then like the government and that everybody will know that we need the income equality and not just that some people think that we need it, but all people need it.
Okay, so that all people need some income equality. And that would sort of come in the form of maybe taking money from some people and giving it to others. And that's a really contentious issue that a lot of people have